The Beast and the Throne. The giant metal doors of the arena opened with a deep rumble. From the dark hallway, a single human man stepped into the light. His clothes were torn, his hands were chained, but his eyes were calm. He didn't look scared. He didn't even blink. Across the arena, thousands of aliens shouted and laughed. They had come to see blood. The air was hot, the sand dry and red like rust. Above everyone, sitting high on a throne of bones and gold, was Princess Jira, the ruler of this cruel world. Jira was tall, with deep violet skin and glowing silver eyes. Her voice could freeze hearts. She stood slowly and raised one long hand. The crowd fell silent. "Human," she said, her voice echoing like thunder. "Why aren't you trembling? One word from me and my pet will devour you." The human looked up at her. His name was Dax. He had been captured from a far-off human outpost. He had heard stories about Zira, the princess who fed living creatures to her beast just for fun. But he didn't speak. He just stood there, quiet. The crowd grew louder again, hungry for a show. Jira gave a small smile and snapped her fingers. From behind a steel gate, a roar shook the ground. Heavy footsteps followed. The arena trembled. Out stepped the beast. A monster twice the size of any man, with dark, scaled skin, sharp claws, and glowing red eyes. Its mouth was wide, filled with rows of sharp teeth, and thick ropes of drool dripped to the ground. The crowd screamed with joy. Dax didn't move. The beast walked slowly toward him, growling. It sniffed the air, caught Dax's scent, and growled louder. But Dax still didn't move. No fear in his face. No shaking in his knees. The alien princess narrowed her eyes. "Get on your knees, human," she shouted, voice sharp. "Beg, or die." But Dax only stared at the beast, and the beast stopped walking. The crowd gasped. "What's it doing?" someone shouted. "It should have ripped him apart already," another yelled. Jira's smile vanished. She stepped forward at the edge of her throne platform. "Attack!" she screamed at the beast. But the monster didn't attack. It tilted its head and slowly stepped back. The arena went silent. Dax finally moved. He lifted his hands slowly as far as the chains allowed. Then he bent slightly forward and whispered something. No one could hear the words, but the beast did. The creature lowered its head. Jira looked like she had been struck by lightning. Her guards drew their weapons, unsure of what to do. "Impossible," she whispered. Dax stood straight again and spoke loudly for the first time. His voice was calm and clear. "This beast comes from the wildlands of Xylar 3. I've seen them before. I've lived among them." "You lie," Jira shouted. "I don't," Dax replied. "Your pet was stolen from its home and trained with pain and fear, but it still remembers the old ways, the language of scent, of sound, of respect." The crowd began murmuring, confused, amazed. Some looked afraid. Jira clenched her fists. This human had embarrassed her in front of everyone. She wanted to scream, to kill him. But her beast, her strongest weapon, was obeying him. Dax took one step toward the beast. The creature made a soft rumble and lowered its body slightly, almost like a bow. The guards held their breath. No one moved. "I don't want to fight," Dax said, his eyes meeting the princess's. "But I will not kneel." Jira's silver eyes locked on his. Something inside her twisted, not anger, something deeper. Was it fear? Or curiosity? The crowd began to chant something strange. It wasn't her name. It was his. "Dax! Dax! Dax!" Jira stepped back and sat on her throne again, but her face showed no peace. The human had done something no one else ever had he made her monster bow. And deep inside her heart, she wanted to know how. The crowd was no longer laughing. Their joy had turned to confusion. Their cheers had turned to whispers. The arena, once full of noise, now held only silence, and the heavy breathing of the massive beast standing before. The human, Princess Jira's eyes narrowed. Her pet, a monster that had torn apart warriors, kings, even machines, was standing still. No growl, no attack. Its eyes, glowing red like molten fire, were fixed on Dax. But what truly stunned everyone? The beast looked afraid. Jira rose from her throne, her long fingers clutching the edge of her armrest. "What is this?" she said under her breath. "Why does it hesitate?" Below, Dax took a slow step forward. The alien beast growled deep in its throat, a sound like thunder rolling through the mountains. But it didn't attack. It lowered its head a little more, like it was thinking. No one had ever seen this before. Jira's general, a towering brute with 3 arms and metal horns, leaned toward her. "Your Highness, should we kill the Yao? Human now? He is playing some trick." "No," Jira said, her voice sharp. "I want to see more." Dax stood still, then did something even stranger. He closed his eyes. The crowd gasped again. Was he crazy? Was he giving up? But then, the monster moved forward. Slowly. Carefully. Like it didn't want to scare him. Its huge clawed foot pressed into the red sand. Another step. And another. Dax didn't move. His eyes stayed shut. The arena held its breath. And then, the beast reached him. It sniffed his face. The breath from its nose blew dust from his hair. Its giant teeth were just inches from his neck. One bite, and Dax would be gone. But the monster didn't bite. Instead, it blinked. Its head lowered. Its eyes, burning red just seconds ago, seemed calmer now, softer, like it remembered something. Then gently, it sat. Sat. The arena exploded with shock. "He tamed it," someone yelled. "He's a monster charmer," another shouted. Jira stood frozen. Her face was unreadable. But inside her heart was racing. Not with fear, but something else. Something she hadn't felt in years. She descended the throne slowly, her long cape dragging behind her like a wave of shadow. Every step she took, the crowd fell silent again. She stopped at the edge of the arena wall and shouted down, "Who are you, human? What did you do to my beast?" Dax opened his eyes at last. "I didn't do anything," he said calmly. "I just spoke. In a way you never tried." Jira's voice grew colder. "It only listens to me. I raised it. I broke its will. You broke its body," Dax interrupted. "Not its soul." The princess's fists clenched. The crowd murmured louder. Dax continued, "These creatures are not just weapons. They were once free. Noble. Loyal. If treated with honor." The beast growled. Not at Dax, but at Jira. And Jira, for the first time in her life, took one step back. The alien guards moved in, but she raised her hand to stop them. "I don't need your help," she hissed. Her silver eyes burned into Dax's. "You've made a dangerous choice, human," she said softly. Dax looked back at her. "Maybe, but so have you." She didn't reply. She only turned and walked away. Her cloak swirled like smoke behind her. But the damage was done. The people saw it. The guards saw it. Her beast had bowed, and she had stepped back. And in a world where power was everything, that meant she had lost. The beast sat quietly beside the human like a well-trained hound, its chest rising slowly with each breath. Red dust swirled around them in the dying light of the twin suns, but the arena was completely silent. Princess Jira's silver eyes burned from her high platform. Her people were still watching. Her power was slipping, and the human hadn't even raised a weapon. She clenched her teeth. This wasn't supposed to happen. She leaned over the railing and shouted, "Speak, human! What magic did you use? What control do you hold?" Dax looked up at her, not with fear, but with calm. Then he did something that made the entire arena freeze again. He turned to the beast. He leaned close, put his lips near its massive scarred ear, and whispered. Just one word, a sound too soft for anyone else to hear. But the beast did hear, and it shivered, not in fear but in recognition. The monster slowly closed its eyes and made a low, deep hum, a strange sound that was almost peaceful. "Did he name it?" one of the alien guards whispered. "No," said another. "He's speaking in their old language, the lost tongue." Princess Jira's heart dropped. The old language was forbidden, long erased from her world, a language only known by the wilds, and those who had lived beyond the reach of empires. "How do you know this tongue?" she demanded. Dax stood up straight, brushing dust from his sleeves like a man preparing for tea. "Not war. Years ago," he said, "I crash-landed on the outer edges of your empire. No rescue, no contact, only wild things, and time." He looked at the beast. "This one's kind found me when I was starving. They didn't attack. They watched. They waited. Then they accepted me. I learned their ways." The crowd was restless. Now, Jira could feel their unease. For years she ruled by fear. She kept control through blood and strength. But this man had never raised a hand, and already her beast bowed to him. "You speak like a scholar," she said bitterly. "But you are just a broken human with no world, a lost animal whisperer. Nothing more." "Maybe," Dax said, shrugging. "But I didn't have to chain this creature to gain its respect." The beast made another soft sound, almost like agreement. Jira's anger boiled inside her. This wasn't just about one beast. This was about her control, her throne, her fear-based empire slipping away, because of one human and a whisper. "Enough," she roared. "Guards, chain him, now." But the guards hesitated. The beast turned toward them. It didn't growl. It didn't attack. It stood, tall, powerful, silent, and the guards stepped back. "No one touches him," someone said softly. Princess Jira turned sharply. It was one of her senior warriors. Then another stepped forward. "The beast listens to him. Maybe we should too." "You dare question me?" she hissed. The warrior dropped to one knee. "We dare wonder." Jira's face turned pale. Her rule, built over years of conquest, was shaking from a single moment of peace between a man and a monster. She turned and stormed back into the shadows of her palace. But she wasn't giving up. If the human could command beasts with whispers, then she wanted to know how. That night, the palace walls felt colder than usual. Princess Jira sat alone in her private chamber, surrounded by gold, glowing crystals and rare alien perfumes. But her heart was storming with rage. She stared into a black glass screen, watching the replay of the moment. Again and again, the moment her beast bowed to the human, to the human. The very idea made her blood boil. She slammed her hand onto the console. Why didn't it obey? Why did it hesitate? I raised it since it was a pup. I broke its mind. It belongs to me. No answer came, only the reflection of her own silver eyes looking back at her. But now, they didn't feel so powerful. They looked shaken. In the lower wing of the palace, Dax was locked in a special chamber. No chains, no cuffs, just an energy field. Yet he sat calmly, cross-legged on the floor as if meditating. The beast was outside, chained yet peaceful, refusing to leave the door that separated them. Guards watched nervously. None dared go near the creature now. Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the hallway. The guards stiffened. Princess Jira appeared wearing a long dark robe with gold threads. She said nothing to the soldiers as the energy field dropped. She walked into Dax's cell alone. The room was silent except for the low breathing of the beast outside. Dax opened his eyes. "I expected you sooner," he said gently. "I expected you to be afraid," she replied. "I am not." She walked slowly around him like a hawk circling prey. "You embarrassed me. In front of my people. In front of my throne. You embarrassed yourself," Dax replied without emotion. "You tried to command respect through fear. But fear is a weak chain. It always breaks. She stopped walking. Her face twitched. She wanted to lash out, to crush him. But deep down, his words struck something real. She lowered her voice. "Tell me, human, what did you whisper to the beast?" "A name," he said. She blinked. "A name?" "Yes, its true name. The one its mother gave it, before it was stolen. Beasts like that remember names, even in pain." Silence. Then something changed in her eyes. For the first time. Not anger. Not pride. Not cruelty. Shame. She turned her back to him and walked to the edge of the room, staring through the energy glass at her monster curled by the door. It looked almost peaceful. "How do you know these things?" she whispered. "I didn't come to your world to fight," Dax said. "I came to survive, and survival teaches you to listen." Jira looked down at her own hands. They had held power for so long, but now they trembled. "All my life," she said softly, "I've been told power means control. Control over fear, over others, even over pain." She looked over her shoulder. "But you have no chains, no throne. And yet the crowd chants your name." Dax stood up slowly. "I don't want their worship," he said. "I want their respect, and yours." Jira's face changed again. This time she looked away, not because of pride, but because she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Respect. The next day, everything changed. In front of the alien court, Jira walked down the steps of her throne, not above her people, but among them. Everyone stared. Beside her walked Dax, and the beast followed calmly at his side. Gasps filled the palace. Jira raised her voice. "This man is no prisoner. He is my guest, and my teacher." The crowd didn't know what to do, but slowly, one alien bowed, then another, and another, not just to her, to him, Dax, the human who taught a world of conquerors that even monsters deserve kindness. Princess Jira had been many things in her life, powerful, feared, untouchable, but today she felt like something else. Vulnerable. She had spent so long sitting on her throne, watching others beg, watching them cower. But now, for the first time, she found herself in a place where no one had the answers, where her power no longer seemed to matter. She had just watched the humans enter the palace, no chains, no guards, and with them, Dax, the human who had tamed her beast with nothing but a few whispered words. Now she led him through the shadowy halls of her palace, down deep into the hidden, forgotten parts of her kingdom. The scent of dust and forgotten things filled the air. The walls were old, cracked, and the floor was cold. Jira didn't speak. She kept her eyes forward. But the anger that had burned so brightly earlier was now something darker. Curiosity. At the end of the corridor, there was a heavy door. The guards didn't question her. No one ever did, except for Dax. He stopped, before the door. "This is where you keep your secrets?" Jira turned to face him. "No, it's where I hide my failures." The door opened, revealing a room lit by dim, flickering lights. Rows of cages lined the walls. Inside each cage was a creature in pain. Some were animals. Some were beings like her, alien species twisted beyond recognition. Dax stepped into the room, his face falling with regret. "What is this?" he whispered. Jira's voice was barely above a whisper as well. "These are the creatures I've created, or broken." She waved a hand at the cages. Each one of them was meant to be perfect, to be stronger, to serve me. But they all failed. She paused, glancing at Dax. "I experimented on them, modified them, changed them into something they were never meant to be." Dax moved closer to one of the cages. A small alien creature, once beautiful and elegant, now twisted and deformed, stared back at him with empty eyes. How long has this been happening? He asked softly. Jira's jaw tightened. For as long as I can remember. They are tools. Tools that should have made me invincible. But instead, they are just broken. Dax took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving the creature. And this is the cost of your empire? Jira's gaze softened, though her pride refused to fully fade. Yes. The silence hung thick. Dax finally turned to her. His voice was calm, but there was something sharp in his tone. These creatures, they're not just experiments. They're lives, and you've been taking them away. Jira looked away. They were never meant to be alive in the first place. They were meant to serve me, to obey. Dax stepped forward, standing beside her now, his voice low. Then why do you still look at them like they matter? Her heart raced in a way she couldn't explain. For the first time, she wondered, had she really been looking for power all this time? Or had she been searching for something else? Dax's eyes held hers. If you really want to understand the beasts, you have to start respecting them. Jira clenched her fists. I don't need respect. I need power. No, Dax said, a softness in his voice. You need trust. Respect comes with it. And if you want your beasts to serve you, you need to show them kindness first. Jira shook her head. It's too late for that. Dax didn't reply. Immediately. He just walked over to the cage nearest him. Inside, an alien creature, a hybrid of several species, was curled up, its body shaking, its eyes filled with fear. He knelt down slowly, speaking softly in the language Jira had heard, only in whispers. The creature flinched at first, then gradually its trembling stopped. The creature stared at him. Jira watched in stunned silence. The beast, the very one she had tortured, now lay still, its eyes calm, its body relaxed. How? Jira breathed. I told you, Dax said quietly, standing up and turning to face her. They respond to kindness, not fear. You've spent so long ruling through fear that you forgot how to speak to them, how to understand them. Jira stared at the creature in awe. But they were broken, beyond repair. Dax shook his head. You only broke them because you wanted to control them. I didn't break anything, I simply listened. She looked back at him, her thoughts racing. This human had done what she thought impossible. He had made the beast trust him. And he had made her question everything. For the first time in her life, she felt unsure of what to do. The moon hung low over the palace, casting long shadows across the courtyard. Inside the walls, the night was alive with whispers. Dax had barely settled into his chamber when he felt the change in the air. Something was off. The palace, once full of prideful laughter, now seemed too still. He rose from his bed and walked to the window, staring out at the dimly lit world below. The beast was still outside, as it had been all day, guarding the palace doors. But something wasn't right. Suddenly, a soft knock echoed through his door. Dax turned quickly, his instincts sharp. Who's there? He called out, his voice steady but wary. A voice answered, a low whisper through the cracks. It's me, human. Princess. Jira has summoned you. His heartbeat quickened. Jira? What was this about? He opened the door to find one of the palace servants standing there, eyes wide with fear. You must come quickly, the servant said, stepping back. The princess is in danger. Without another word, Dax followed the servant down the cold corridors of the palace. His mind raced with thoughts, but there was no time to ask questions. The hall seemed darker than usual, as if even the palace itself was holding its breath. When they reached Jira's chamber, Dax found the door ajar. He pushed it open, but what he saw inside made his blood run cold. Jira lay on the floor, her eyes wide with terror, her body trembling. She was surrounded by a group of shadowy figures, dressed in dark cloaks, their faces hidden in the gloom. One of them held a sharp, glowing knife to her throat. The servant stepped back, disappearing, into the shadows. The figures turned toward Dax as he stepped into the room, a chill running down his spine. "Stay back," one of them said, in a harsh, grating voice. "We've come for the princess." Dax took a step forward, his mind racing. He could hear the thumping of his own heart. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice calm but firm. "You do not belong here, human," the voice replied, more mocking than threatening. "Step aside and you may live." Jira's eyes darted to Dax, desperation written across her face. She couldn't speak, but her silent plea was clear. Something deep inside Dax shifted. He didn't care who these people were. He didn't care about their threats. The only thing that mattered now was Jira. He slowly raised his hands. "I'm not going anywhere," he said quietly, "and neither is she." The figures laughed, but their laughter was empty, cold. "You think you can stop us? You are nothing but a human." But Dax wasn't thinking about his strength. He wasn't thinking about the fight. He had learned something in his time here. He had learned how to listen. And right now, the most important thing was listening to Jira's heart. He took one step forward, then another. The cloaked figures hesitated. They didn't expect him to move closer. They didn't expect him to care. Without warning, Dax lunged forward. He grabbed the wrist of the figure holding the knife and twisted, forcing the weapon to the ground. But in that moment, everything went wrong. The figure pulled a hidden blade from its sleeve, slashing it across Dax's side. The pain hit him like a burst of fire, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Jira screamed as Dax fell to the floor, clutching his side. But then something strange happened. The beast, still guarding outside, let out a deafening roar. The ground beneath them shook. The figures froze, their eyes widening in fear. They had no idea what was coming. Dax struggled to get up, but the pain in his side was too much. Jira, weakened but still strong, pushed herself to her feet and reached for the weapon on the floor. The figures tried to stop her, but it was too late. She had already picked up the blade and raised it in the air. The beast charged through the doors with a roar that shook the entire palace. Its massive form filled the doorway. It was the last thing the assassins saw before they were swallowed in darkness. The beast moved fast, taking down the figures with brutal precision, but it didn't touch Dax. It didn't harm Jira. It knew them. Within moments, the chamber was silent again. The only sounds were the heavy breathing of the beast and the soft groan of Dax, struggling to stay conscious. Jira knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she pressed against his wound. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Please stay with me." Dax tried to smile, even though the pain made it impossible. "You're safe. Thanks to you," she said softly. "You saved me." He didn't say anything more. His vision blurred, and the last thing he saw before everything went black was Jira's face looking down at him. The human had saved the princess, but at what cost? The sun had just begun to rise, casting a golden glow over the ruined palace. The once proud structure now lay in ruins, its doors broken, walls cracked, and blood-stained sand marking the final stand of the assassins. Inside, the beast, now fully free, paced slowly, its massive form moving through the corridors with silent purpose. Jira sat beside Dax, who was still unconscious, his wounds bandaged but the pain lingering in his body. She couldn't take her eyes off him. She had seen him fight with nothing but his will, using no weapons, no magic, only the power of his heart, his mind, and his connection with the creatures he understood. The human who had come to her world as a prisoner had become her savior, her protector. Now he was her equal. The beast stood guard in the doorway, watching with its golden eyes. It had never left Dax's side, even as the palace crumbled. For the first time in years, Jira felt something stir inside her, a deep, unfamiliar feeling. Gratitude. Her empire had been built on fear and control. She had forced people, creatures, even allies, into submission, using pain and threats to maintain power. But in this moment, she realized something crucial. Respect was the true source of strength. Dax had proven that. The day passed slowly. Zira's healing powers were enough to keep Dax alive, but the wound he'd suffered from the assassin's blade was deep. It would take time before he could move, before he could fight again. Zira wasn't waiting for him to wake. She had a decision to make. The remnants of the palace, the court, the soldiers were in chaos. The assassination attempt had shattered the illusion of invincibility she had always maintained. In the darkness of the palace, a new reality was being born, a reality where she could no longer rule by fear alone. Hours later, Dax's eyes fluttered, open. He groaned, his side aching, but his gaze immediately found Zira's. There was something different in her eyes, something he couldn't quite place. "Zira," he whispered, struggling to sit up. "You're awake," she said softly, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "You've been through a lot." "I know. But it's not over yet," Dax replied, his voice steady despite the pain. "The people who tried to kill you, they'll come back." Zira nodded. She had known this day would come, but she never expected it to feel like this, like a breaking, a shift in everything she had built. And yet, as she looked at Dax, she knew it was time for a change. "No more fear," she said, her voice clear and firm. "No more control." Dax looked up at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean..." Zira took a deep breath. "I'm no longer the ruler of this empire. We need to rebuild it from the ground up. It's time to listen, to heal." Her words were powerful, but Dax could see the uncertainty behind them. She was not the princess of fear anymore. She was a leader in the making, learning that real strength came from unity, not dominance. The palace was in ruins. The guards who had once been loyal to Zira were gone, and in their place, a new force was rising, led by a human who had shown them a different way. Dax stood beside Zira in the palace courtyard, watching as the beast paced before them. The sun was setting, casting a fiery red hue across the sky. It was as if the world itself was watching, waiting for the new reign to begin. "The beast," Dax said quietly. "He's not just a creature of war. He's a protector, a guardian." Zira nodded, her eyes softening. "Yes, he is." The beast, hearing its name, stopped pacing and looked at them with glowing golden eyes. It stepped closer, its massive form casting a shadow over both of them. "Will it always listen to me now?" Dax asked, turning to Zira. She smiled, but it was no longer a smile of arrogance. "It listens to whoever shows it respect." The palace began to change. Over the next few weeks, the once proud walls of Zira's empire were rebuilt, not with stone, but with new principles. Zira and Dax worked together, bringing the people together to rebuild their lives and their homes. The beasts that had once been feared were now treated with respect as allies and protectors, not weapons. Zira, once a ruler of fear, had become a leader of compassion and strength. She worked with Dax, listening to his wisdom, learning to speak the language of the beasts, and most importantly, learning to speak the language of the people. One day, Zira stood before a group of citizens, warriors, and even former enemies. Dax stood beside her. The beast was at her feet. "You were right," Zira said to the gathered crowd. "Power is not in control. It is in trust. It is in respect." The crowd was silent, unsure at first. "We will rebuild this empire," Zira continued, her voice strong. "But we will do it together. Humans, beasts, and aliens alike." Dax stepped forward, his voice clear. "Together we will rise, not as conquerors, but as family." The crowd murmured in agreement. The change had begun. And standing side by side, Dax and Zira, once enemies, now partners, watched as the empire that had once ruled with fear began to transform into something stronger. A united world, bound by respect, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between humans and creatures. The age of fear was over,